In the world of comics, there is no duo more iconic than Batman and Robin, a partnership that has existed since the early 1940s, and in that time there have been multiple heroes who have taken up the identity of Batman's most trusted sidekick, but none are as notable nor beloved as the original. Dick Grayson was a young acrobat who grew up in the circus, only becoming Robin after witnessing the deaths of his parents. He was taken in by Bruce as his legal ward and eventually became the boy wonder Robin. But after countless stories together over the years, what more could be said about the two, especially in the early years of Dick's upbringing? Well, that is where writer Jeff Lemire and artist Dustin Nguyen come in. Offering their own spin on this duo's relationship, we get to see Nguyen's breathtaking art, painting the book with a unique watercolor aesthetic that keeps the run visually striking and emotionally dynamic. We get to see Gotham painted in more white than I may have ever seen before, a decision that I don't feel is purely stylistic. This story is very heavy, and I think painting it with light in almost every scene does service to depicting the idea that there is hope glowing on every page, but Nguyen's eye for detail excels in facial expression as well. Without Killer Croc saying a word, I'm able to get a sense for Croc's wariness after engaging Batman in combat, his longing as a child to desolation as an adult, ending in his monstrous anger as he discovers Robin is linked to his past. Nguyen feels like he's very in touch with not only depicting the right emotions for each character, but expressing them in the unique way that that character would express them. Now if we move over to Lemire's writing, we see that he centers the story sometime after the death of Dick's parents. This is a Robin story, but it's also a showcase of the uncertain and at times volatile relationship that existed between Batman, Robin, and Alfred in the early days. Part of that struggle concerns Robin wondering if it's possible to become a crime fighter without losing your childhood. Questions that are handled with detail due to Lemire's superb writing. He's someone who has previously shown his prowess for writing very introspective and personal character studies. In his runs with Moon Knight in the Century, he represents these characters faithfully while at the same time digging deep into the depths of their psyches and traumas. This is the element to Lemire's writing that has been so fascinating to me, and I think it's well represented in this series. Though some have taken issue with Lemire's characterization of Batman, saying that he is far too cruel to Robin. And in fairness, some of what Batman does throughout this series is pretty disturbing, but it's important to keep in mind that this is before Bruce has had years of teamwork, before he's allowed the people around him to warm his cold nature. Robin is one of the first people to test his lack of empathy, and so some of the situations and conversations in this series are uncomfortable to read, but none of this is ever left without a sense of progression from Bruce, or backlash from other characters. It should be no shock that someone with the upbringing of Bruce may treat others in a dehumanizing manner without realizing it. He's lived with unprocessed trauma for his entire life, using it to fuel his drive to become Batman. He acts this way because it's what he did to himself, a cycle of dehumanization that may have never had any hope of turning around if it wasn't for Alfred. Batman only realizes how negative his path would be for Robin after he's had time to experience catharsis from the Bat family.
I shouldn't be surprised, since you indoctrinated Robin into crime fighting at the ripe old age of 9.
Robin needed to help bring the men who murdered his family to justice.
So he could turn out like you?
So that he wouldn't.
In many iterations, Alfred is the classic witty and sympathetic butler that we've all come to love, but it's in Robin and Batman that we really get a sense for how much Alfred and Bruce stand ideologically opposed to one another, and it's through Dick that this theme of loss of childhood comes through. Bruce emphasizes constant training and fierce discipline, holding little regard for his life outside of crime fighting, because that's exactly what Bruce Wayne did to himself growing up. It only makes sense that this mentality would follow through to Dick Grayson, and it's not as if this mentality lacks reason. What they are doing is incredibly dangerous, and Batman is wise to try and prepare Robin for that danger as best he can. The problem is that Bruce is not good at acknowledging when he's gone too far, which is usually the cause for Alfred to step in and point out to Bruce the consequences of his actions, and despite Bruce's stubbornness, we see these arguments with Alfred start to have a positive effect on Bruce. After a heated exchange with Alfred, Bruce ends up making Dick the classic Robin suit, taking the ideas Grayson had written in his journal and making them a reality, a sign of the compassion that Alfred implored Bruce to give to Dick. But despite his best attempts, he was only able to make the suit because he read Dick's personal journal, using this tense moment to break the news that they cannot keep secrets, to which Robin responds in anger, upset that the one and only thing that he was able to keep to himself was now lost. Bruce is confused by this. not understanding the harm he caused because he gave Robin what he thought he wanted, even if he had to violate his privacy to do so. A feeling I'm sure Bruce has never really had to wrestle with. He grew up alone, and now as an adult he spends his nights violating the privacy of any criminal that he stumbles upon. But at the end of the day, he is trying to connect with Robin, as Alfred explains to Dick later, and Bruce even ends up apologizing for what he's done, demonstrating that he does care for Dick, even if he struggles to show it in the right manner. He is trying at the end of the day. Lemire balances confrontations like these with Robin's inner turmoil. Spending his nights beating the underbelly of Gotham to a pulp is something that none of the other kids that he goes to school with can relate to. It makes the idea of just giving in to the darkness all the more tempting. To stray away from trying to live a normal childhood and to just become a soldier like Bruce did. But the critical difference is that he has an Alfred who has already raised Bruce, and so understands the importance of stressing to Dick the value of having a life outside of being Robin. And so by the end of the story, Robin is able to discover his own sense of purpose as the light to Batman's darkness. It's a satisfying conclusion that adds to the ethos of Robin. Each of the 3 issues here were able to make me cry, a feat that not many comics have been able to do. The characters have rarely felt more human than they do in this book, and as a whole I'd say this run stands as a testament to what Robin is, not just as a partner to Batman, but as a son to Bruce.